Every Night is Game Night Preview Series, Episode 17, Honeycomb Cavern with the designer, Alexander Shen. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to the Every Night is Game Night Preview Series. This is your host, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to take a massive left turn with our preview series today. We usually have, bigger games, Gloom-a-Kill Forth, a Perdition's Mouth, big dungeon crawlers, or strategy games, or whatever it is. Today, we are going to hopefully get in and out nice and quick with a roll and write game that is currently on Kickstarter, and the designer has been good enough to take some time to join us. It is Alexander Shen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for your time, actually.
Oh, well. I guess we are a mutual benefit society over here. That's great. Cool. Yeah. So, we have yet to do a roll and write on the show before. It's just kind of this thing. I mean, I'm personally not a roll and write guy, so it doesn't show up on my radar, but it's always cool to kind of do something a little bit different. So before we get into that, tell us a little bit about yourself. You are a self-publisher.
Yeah, self-publisher. Full-time job. I work in Silicon Valley. So I work in tech, and I'm a program manager, and it's kind of like by trade. I started out in games actually maybe 10, 12 years ago doing producer work. And after having kids and not seeing them because of tight schedules and whatnot, I decided just to move into a better life work balance with tech, finding the right place for that. So, yeah, that's what I do for full-time. But designing and making games and drawing is kind of my passion.
So this is not your first game?
I wouldn't. No, it's not. I would certainly say a lot of my games that I've made are not great, but it's but yeah, I've done a few. I did a lot of indie game development on PC and Mac, and I did some producer and QA work as well for just normal shipped titles out there. So yeah, I've kind of just been in games for a long time, but never really in the traditional tabletop hobby gaming industry. So this is probably closer to a newer adventure out into tabletop self-publishing.
Mm-hmm. So before we get into the game is Honeycomb Cavern. It is a simple little roll and write. We'll definitely talk about it. I'm curious as to why you chose the Kickstarter route, because this is a game that you could just print and play, and you print one little sheet of paper, you get a crayon or a piece of lipstick or anything you want that makes colors and some dice, and you're good to go.
Well, that's a really good question. So I was thinking about that earlier because if you go to the Kickstarter and just print and play in general on Board Game Geek, like the board is available on the page itself, and there's a video of how to play. But I realized that like when you try to get games onto the table, there's just so many different gating factors that actually get the game onto the table. Mm-hmm. So for me, in my past experience, like I've looked at a lot of solo play roll and write games that are really great. Basically, just to take a step back, anything that's like an electronic PDF that you can just print out, I tend to want to try it, but rarely do I ever get it to the table in some shape or form. It's just the idea that, I have it and it's an electronic file. I just don't really want to deal with it. So like that's the first gate. Yeah, I just by making it an actual Kickstarter, it kind of gives it a little bit more, or it makes it a more tangible thing. So no longer is it just a print and play that I think that maybe one day, if I'm really bored, I'll print it out and try it. But I actually have a physical book. And that physical book now gives me a little bit more, like I paid for it and it's like on my stack and I know it's really short. So maybe it'll get past that first gate of like never being able to try it. And actually I might get it onto the table now. I do keep the book with me in my backpack, and in between meetings or whatever, if I just need like 3 to 5 minutes just to do something, I can just whip it out and roll some dice and jump around on the board and get a score.
I mean, we're talking about it, so tell us about the game. Tell us how it works. It doesn't take that long to talk about. It's real simple.
Yeah, it's a high-scoring game, roll and write, and you take 3d6 and you roll the 3d6. You start in the center of a large hex grid, and the idea is that you're supposed to jump around in this hex grid, which is like an underground cavern with tiles falling beneath your feet, with the 3d6 that you roll. The 3d6 that you roll, one of them determines the direction that you're going, and the difference of the other two determine the distance. There's a little intro comic that goes with the game just to provide a little bit of theme. And the whole idea is just these stone dragons in this honeycomb-shaped cavern are blowing fire at you. And depending which dice you're choosing kind of represents which of the dragons are blowing fire at you, and you're just kind of jumping out of the way, collecting treasure as you move. And you're just trying to get out without crossing a path you've already gone and collect as much treasure before you either get trapped or exit the map completely. So there's a little bit of push your luck, and there's a little bit of planning, because that first move, you basically have 3 options to take right from the get-go. But as you go, you strategize where you want to go. And there's a little bit of strategy with the additional jumping special move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got a chance to play this. You were good enough to provide me with a PDF, and it's not a Sudoku, it's dice, so you can't do, that doesn't go together. But it gave me that put me in that headspace at least a little bit, because the hexagon or the shape that you gave me is a honeycomb, and it has numbers. It's just filled with numbers. So you're rolling, and you have to like calculate the distances. So like, okay, do I want to go in the southeast direction 5 spaces? Do I want to go north 2 spaces? And my head was filled with numbers in the same way that if I'm doing like a light Sudoku puzzle, but it's giving me that spatial thing too. So it's pretty interesting, the way you were able to kind of bring that together in this really simple package.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Should I impute that you're a math guy? You're a Silicon Valley guy, so this is just kind of something that appeared, or?
So the theme itself actually came from this story universe that I've just kind of been working on. Like, my kids kind of wanted like just to hear a new story about a thing, so I kind of put my dog in it. So like our dog is the dog that's in it, and we have 2 cats too. And I was like, well, I'll just give the dog a tail that's like a cat, and I guess that's fine. So that's the theme where it comes from, and it just kind of blossomed from that specific thing. But a math person, I think, is more of a pragmatic approach to it. Is that I've done a lot of multiplayer type game designs in the past, and like I think at one point in my life I wanted to do a CCG of some kind, and I just realized that, well, like, nobody has time for that. Like to balance and design that, even just like a multiplayer head-to-head game with like perfect information, like a chess type game or whatever, or TAC or something, like that kind of play testing and balancing and like mechanism, just like refinement, like you can't do it by yourself.
Right.
You really need to do it with people. So I took a step back and said, as much as I'd like to be able to make like the next amazing competitive game out there, I should really just take approach that is easier for me to handle and actually to get in the hours of testing that are required to make sure that the gameplay itself works. So I took math and logic, just like that realm of things, to be the kind of what drove me to do this one. Mm-hmm. And yes, I guess I do like math.
It's not real. I mean, you're adding 2 dice and everything. It's not really math, but it definitely puts me in that like numbers headspace, which was a pretty interesting thing, because there's rolling rights all over the place. I think they just had a Gen Cant rolling right contest, and there was like all these different like variations on it that you can use spatial stuff, or you could use like a 10-sided or whatever it is. Like, so there's a million ways to do it. Did you kind of dip into some of that stuff, or is it just kind of sui generis? This is the idea that I have.
It's more of the latter. It's just like this kind of the idea I had. Originally the idea was actually a pirate ship, because I was just thinking, how do I thematically apply these 3 random dice to movement? And I was like, oh, it's like I have like a pirate ship, and it's like pushing me around, and I'm picking up treasure from the ocean, like at one point. And then that's when I flipped it back to the whole Sadie cat dog thing. But no, like I actually am unfamiliar with Gen Cant, and I'm wrote it down to look at later. To see if I've inadvertently just like stolen a game and not even know it.
Yeah, it's funny because I have a friend. He's another Silicon Valley guy. This guy John. He said once, like, everybody has a roll and write in them, and everybody has a trick taking in them in terms of game designers. So there you go. You're getting this one out of the way right now.
Oh man. So the last 2 games that I did were trick taking games.
Oh, there you go.
and they're against very rudimentary, basically random AI. It's like the AI says, "Is this a legal play?" Yes, then I'm going to play it. There's actually no strategy involved there. But yeah, that's funny.
All right. So when you pledge for the Kickstarter, it's funded very, very humble goals. I think it was under $1,000 was the funding goal. And so when you pledge, how much is the pledge and what do you get?
Yeah, the pledge is actually, there's only a few tiers. So the first one is a $2 tier, and that just gets you the PDF. So print to your heart's content. The $6 pledge gets you a physical book. The book itself is 112 pages, so it has 100 boards in it, and 12 pages of instructions how to play and introduction comic kind of stuff in it, drawings. And yeah, I mean, shipping for US is $3, and shipping to Canada, because of the weight of the book, is $10. But if you do buy multiple books, I don't really increase the shipping. It's just going to be a $3 flat charge for US and $10 flat for Canada. Yeah, and it's a really simple. I wanted to keep the cost as low as possible. I have a few sample books printed, and I just realized like whenever you do Kickstarters in general, like a large and totally worthwhile, and like it's what's the word? I can't think of the word. Anyway, the idea that like someone charging you whatever their price is for their board game with miniatures and all those different things, like that price is fair, right? It's like a $69 board game, makes sense. But that threshold is really high. And it's totally justified. That's the word. It's a justified cost. But that's another reason I just kind of had a low goal just to get in, because print the book, it's cheap to play, and even if it's like the worst thing you've ever played in your entire life, and I understand it might not be everyone's cup of tea, the cost of entry was like a sandwich. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that's okay to swallow.
Is there anything else in the future that you are working on? And has this Kickstarter thing treated you okay? Would you willing to go back into those waters?
Yeah, I definitely would. So my next thing that I actually want to work on is so I kind of came into this realm of this Honeycomb Cavern with the game design and implementing the story and the comic strip in the beginning. It allows me to do all the things I love to do in one thing. My next attempt after this, seeing that there is a reception for this and the threshold barrier of like $6 is one that people are okay with. I kind of wanted to do I actually do want to do a choose your own adventure comic book, but in a legacy style, just because legacy is like the hot thing. So you'll be putting stickers and editing the book as you go through it.
Oh, wow.
And that would ultimately be the story that you get out of the copy of the book that you have. And then there would be an additional sheet, which is basically your inventory or knowledge that you have gained throughout the game itself. So I've walked in the room and I found a secret code, and then so you would mark on this one separate sheet that you take with you as you progress through the comic book. And you would cross out things in the comic book. So if you were to go back and read it again, it would be that story that you did. And that is my next giant flowchart game. But we'll see how that goes.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for telling us about the game.
I really appreciate your time too. Thank you so much for having me.
And that's going to go ahead and do it for another episode of Every Night is Game Night Preview Series. Thanks to Alex for joining us, and thanks for reaching out, because we don't usually do these really short episodes. We don't usually do roll and writes as a genre. However, I really want this podcast to be about having a low barrier for entry, to be on the podcast, to share your passion, to share like little different things that you're doing in the solo gaming community. It's a really vibrant community, very diverse. So anytime that we can kind of shine a light on a different corner of it, we're going to jump on it. So I hope you guys had a good time with it. If you have any feedback for me, you can reach me at ENGN_podcast on the Twitter. I'm very active in the solo gamers community in Facebook, as well as the One Player Guild. So you can always reach out to me in those two places. We also have a website at everynightisgamenight.com, so you can check out what we have going on over there. I ask for this every time. So if you wanted to go out and really show your love for the show, please, please, please go on to iTunes, to Stitcher, to SoundCloud, to everywhere that you can get this podcast, and throw us a rating. 5 stars would be great. That's how Alex found the podcast, actually. We were just talking, and we were on a recommended search, and he just decided to, listen and become a fan, and that was really great. All that happens because of the rating system. The more ratings we get, the more people are able to find the show and check out what we're doing. So that's it for me. This is Jason signing off. Later, everybody.